I want, I want, I want Marina to deck Amber in the face. Not because I don't want them to be together, but mainly because like Amber needs it right now.
Yeah. So,
Amber needs it right now.
Do you feel anything?
Tess continued to squeeze the man in the gray alien mascot suit, counting the seconds in her head until she reached 20. Because 20 was the amount of seconds an article she read said it would take until a hug would release endorphins. I did for a couple of seconds, but it's gone now. That's not how endorphins work, I think. Like, endorphins aren't, like, permanent.
Yeah.
Get these kids to, like, a therapist.
Yeah.
They can't do this on their own! She backed away, her arms leaving an imprint in the chubby suit. Tess looked up at the alien's lifeless black eyes and bowed. Sorry, mister. Joe and Tess wandered off. The next child in line tackled the alien with a sprinting hug, weighing the immobile suit to the ground. Children swarmed him as the line devolved. Chaos reigned.
It's all good, kiddo. At least you felt something, right?
Feelings are fleeting.
But memories last a lifetime.
With a click of his tongue and a finger gun for good measure, he handed her back her disposable camera. Tess stared at her reflection in the polished floor. Joe patted her head, and each time it landed, she felt like a nail being hammered back into place.
If I'm not mistaken, we each have 4 of our or so tickets left. How's my math?
Pretty good. We have 8 altogether.
Geez, $40 really doesn't take you far here, huh? And I thought the carnies back home were bad.
We're all just marks waiting to be worked, brother. Joe scanned the halls, searching for anything other than another carnival game. Tess was too good at those, and after a few minutes of holding her giant surprises, her arms would get tired. Each and every time, she would hand them off to people she thought needed them more. Toddlers, fighting couples, and those weirdos in costumes. Nothing impressed her. It was as if she saw the whole world in muted monochrome. And she was at least 10 years too early for that. Kid should be able to look at everything around her and view everything with hopeful vibrancy, like it's all being seen for the first time. Maybe have you considered that she doesn't, because she's been on the road all her life? It was a precious point of view that had been taken away from Joe too early, but Tess had a birthright to it, just as much as any other kid. Yet it was something he was beginning to feel like it had been taken away from her too. And that maybe he had something to do with it. Maybe all the treasure hunts and scrambling and general insanity had zapped the poor kid's spirit before it could ever really take off. Maria couldn't be held responsible for it. She could hardly be held responsible for herself. So whenever Joe looked down and saw Tess' quiet, pale face staring into the distance, into a Missouri summer that neither he nor Maria could bear to let her experience, he felt the burden weigh heavier and heavier. And it was his burden. As they wrapped the corner, Joe locked onto the biggest thing in sight. A bouncy castle. It was a saucer-shaped spectacle, carved silver with a green bowl at the very top. Every few moments, with that unmistakable jumping rhythm, a child's silhouette would leap up before being pulled back down.
Hey, how about that bouncy UFO over there?
Tess took one look at the UFO, then took 2 steps so she could hide behind Joe. Let's not.
And why not?
Signs of the cost 8 tickets. Only one of us go in.
Isn't Joe too big to go in a bouncy castle?
Yeah. Probably. She glanced over at it. A tent tumbled out of the entrance with the summer roll salt, shook up, stood up, shook it off, and turned back in. It should be you.
Call it a hunch, but somehow I get the feeling they wouldn't be very accommodating to a 6'3", 200-pound man. But tell you what, you can have my leftover tickets and spend some time in there yourself.
Her shoulders stiffened. She wished she were one of those desert tortoises she saw sometimes. At least they could hide in their shells. Do I have to, Joey? He floated his hand behind her back and ushered her along.
Yeah, sure. When's the last time you played with kids your own age? Wow.
Never.
Joe's just thinking, Jesus Christ. It'll do you some good then. Come on.
He guided her to the entrance of the UFO and handed her his 4 tickets. She limply held up the 8 tickets. A bored teenager with the word staff written on his shirt and tape snatched them from her before she could take a single breath. He tossed them into the trash can next to his folding chair. No shoes or outside toys. The teen pointed at the crovel latched onto her back. Tess looked at Joey with pleading eyes, hoping if she looked uncomfortable enough, he would change his mind.
I'll keep watch. You don't have to worry about anyone stealing it.
God, they're all so dumb.
Yeah.
They're all so dumb. Not Marina and Tess, though. They're doing fine.
Yeah.
It seemed all but inevitable now. Tess bent down and unlaced her hiking boots. She set them side by side, aligning them with Velcro-strapped sneakers that had been tossed aside. Next up was a crovel. She slid it from the sheath. The whole thing was almost as tall as her. She cradled it in both arms and laid it on top of the row of shoes. Its weight flattened all of them at the toes. Tess stood in front of the inflatable horror, looming over her. Piercing shrieks rang out like the screams of the dam clawing through the earth's crust. What were they doing to each other in there? What would they do to her? Come on, kid, there's a line. The teen shoved her into the entrance, the curtain swallowing her entire body. In her last act of despair, she reached her hand out towards the light. Joe? Joe swelled with pride as she watched Tess get whisked away to adventure. What a little trooper. Inside the bouncy castle, Tess whirled like a tumbleweed blown off the street. The screams from before were all around her now. Boys and girls leapt and bounced, some high enough to touch the bulb at the top.
Jeez.
Maybe even high enough to touch the top of the stratosphere. The walls tinted everything in a swampish green. In a far-off corner, there was a boy jumping alone. He had been jumping for so long, his face had turned purple, swelling to the point where he looked like a selfish squirrel. When he saw Tess, he grinned, the gaps in his teeth looking like tiny black holes. He never stopped bouncing. Tess made the jiggly, unbalanced journey to her feet. As soon as she stood, a girl swooped in next to her and screamed in her ear. The pitch was high enough to induce tetanus. If Tess's drums had been made of glass, they would have shattered. Tess fell back down to her knees. Her ears throbbed. The girl stood over her, giggling. Tess loosely raised the finger in protest. Could you not do... The girl ignored her, bouncing away with her pigtails flowing behind her. Oh, okay. Sorry. Gradually, Tessa's hearing faded back to her, a buzz now ringing in the depths of her ears. All she could do to keep herself from dwelling on it was to focus on the electrical hum of air being pumped into the UFO. If she listened close enough, it sounded like chanting. Tess trembled to her feet, her head swinging back and forth to make sure she wasn't up on again. The place stunk of sweat and socks. A pungent smell that didn't so much as attack you, but seep into you, just as it seeped into the rubber walls. She tried to put on a brave face, tried to be courageous. Joey had told her to play with kids on her own age. If it had been her sister, she would have already pieced out. But this was Joey. He actually cared.
Damn.
He wanted her to be okay. And if this is what being okay meant, then she needed to try. Because if she didn't, maybe he wouldn't be okay.
Jesus.
It was probably already the reason why Marina hadn't texted her once the entire time. She must have finally realized Tess was a freak. A freckled ginger boy bounced past her. She raised her hand. Excuse? He leapt on past her. Another girl. This one had a tight ponytail and a sweatshirt with a horse on it. She was doing cartwheels. Pardon? Ignored. From across the castle, a tank of a young boy stepped forward. With every step he took, one of the children sprawled onto the floor, would be launched several inches into the air. It was as if the rules of gravity bent themselves towards this child's whim. He stopped in front of Tess. His breathing was heavy and fierce like a caribou in the winter tundra. He glared at her, his scrunched up eyes looking like they might sink into his wrinkled nose. The longer he stared, the smaller Tess felt, and the smaller Tess felt, the larger he looked. But this wasn't the time to feel small. This was the time to feel brave. She extended her hand, poised for the heartiest handshake her thin fingers would be able to squeeze out. Play? His gaze shifted down to her hand, then shifted back to her. Roar! That's a non-diegetic sound, so I'm gonna do it. His mouth opened like a drawbridge through castle. He unleashed a mighty roar from the depths of his chest. It wasn't enough to set Tess flying back, but the pizza breath might have been. I am King Jeremy! Duel me! King Jeremy stomped both his feet and took his battle stance. The same one he had seen a sumo wrestler do on TV. But it wouldn't be Tess that took up his challenge. A boy with wire-framed glasses stepped forward. No, I am Liberty Man, and I will defeat you with my Holy Grail powers! You're treating. Liberty Man doesn't have Holy Grail powers. Nuh-uh, because I'm also a knight. Another boy shouted. I wanted to be the knight. And another. Ninja! Fortnite?
Yeah. Kids
And
these
another.
days.
Pirate! And another. Astronaut! From there, it just descended into a debate of professions ranging from the mundane to the magical. Tess could only watch in shuddering horror as the battle lines were drawn around, until finally sides had been taken and she was left in the middle. So what are you? She looks like a hobo. Wait, no. But it was too late. It was like a plague. Every child picked up on it. The very essence of hobo had been carved into bouncy castle lore. I want to be a hobo. Please don't. She's already the hobo. I'm not a hobo. I'm not. It occurred to Tess just how hot the inside of the bouncy castle was. The air was stale and hovered over her like a humid day at the river. Her breathing was short, shallow, impossible to control. Her chest heaved in and out, taking oxygen by the shovelful. I knight you as Sir Hobo! No longer children, but shadows. They circled around her, the mutterings of hobo forming an amorphous suggestion of the word. Even when they weren't saying hobo, they were saying hobo. Why was she a hobo? Did she smell, or did they just not like her? Was this rejection? If it was, would they push her? Scream into her other ear? Yell at her? Would Sis yell at her later because of this? Would that make her sad? Would that cause Joey not to be okay? Would Marina stop talking to her altogether? Would it all be her fault? It would. It would have to be. And then she would wake at night when it was dark, when bad things happened. When bad thoughts happened. Would her life always be like that? Just one big bad thought? Hobo! 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 It was a church choir now, and the entire congregation, except for her, was singing. The girl with the pigtail screamed. Tess shoved through the crowd of regular Gilligan children who were not singing or chanting or even a choir. She ran for the exit. Back outside, Joe swallowed back a yawn. Tess bounced out of the UFO. The teen working at the entrance would look at his phone as she darted off. Her head swung back and forth, a silent promise that she would never go back.
Tess, hold up! Where are you headed? Tess!
He watched as the top of Tess's bandana disappeared into a sea of attendees. Some made space for her. Most didn't.
Crap.
That's you.
Yeah.
He rushed over to grab Tess's belongings.
Wait, you can't just leave your things here. Tess!
He sprinted out of the play area, her shoes and crobbles from his hands.
Tess, where are you? Just say something, so I know you're okay.
A flood of worst-case scenarios spiraled through his thoughts. Running away, kidnapped, hurt, the usual suspects. But there was one image that taunted him, and despite never having been witness to it, had carved itself into his memories for years. It would have remained there his entire life. In this vivid painting where the water flowed, a toad croaked and brush stripped the humidity of summer, there was a small boy that floated down the stream, face down, bobbing with the current. Except now the boy had platinum hair, a red bandana that was sopping wet. They were pale and still. He tried to push it out of his mind. Thinking about it made it harder to run. Harder to breathe. But it wouldn't go away. Not really. His burden to bear.
Jesus Christ.
Get these bitches some therapy, oh my god. They're not too cool for therapy.
Yeah.
Please. Being an...
I mean, they probably can't afford it, right?
Probably the trio, you know? Like... But, like, they're... But, like, at least Joe's, like, on good terms with, like... Amber and Marina, so, like...
Yeah.
But they need the therapy money, too!
Yeah.
They just all need to get... I feel really bad for all of them! This is just making me really sad!
Yeah, this session's been fucked up.
This session has been fucked up! I'm just... gonna keep on going.
Yeah.
Finally, there was some respite. Assurance said it was okay, that Tess was okay. Far from the activities, where the crowds had thinned and the decorations sparse, Tess sat against the wall. There was one drinking fountain on the wall, and she sat directly under it. Curled into a ball, with her knees drawn to her chest, she rocked back and forth, her bandana showing her face. Joe breathed a sigh of relief. On the off chance there was someone up there looking out for her, he looked up and tipped his bandana. He strolled up to Tess and shot her a smile.
How's it going, kiddo?
No response.
I think you forgot these.
He leaned her grovel against the wall. His general tumbled to just drop the shoes, but he made sure to place them gently at her feet instead. Her shoulders huffed twice. She looked up at him. 2 tears slipped out of the corners of her eyes. Otherwise, there were no sore eyes or a puffy face. Joe dropped his knee.
Hey, is everything okay?
She shook her head, once left, once right. I don't know if I'm happy or not. His mouth hung open as he tried to formulate a response. Although the truth was obvious as the 2 tears sliding down her cheeks. No happy person would ask that question.
Do you feel unhappy?
She nodded. I think so. Joe frowned and looked away. The guilt made it too hard to look at her. Tess wiped away her tears and sniffed up everything else.
Are you afraid to cry?
Not really. I just don't feel like doing it now.
So you feel better?
No. Just don't feel like crying now. Other kids cry a lot. They scream too. I don't know how they do it so much. It seems hard. She brought her knees further into her chest. It's scary.
Emotions are pretty scary.
Yeah. I want them to go away.
You feel them a lot, huh?
Yeah, yes and no. Sometimes I feel a little, sometimes I feel a lot. It feels like... Tess ruffled her bandana and tried to think of words. Words are hard. Finding words for herself were harder. It feels like people want me to feel a lot when I feel a little, or want me to feel a little when I feel a lot.
Did you feel a lot back there?
Joe motioned down the hall where the bouncy castle was, where all the hectic things were. Too much. Like I shouldn't be there, and they made me not want to be there. It's always like this when I try to play. Joe tilted his head.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. Joe's shoulders slumped. The kid really had a way of taking the calcium out of your milk.
A lot when a little, huh?
Yeah. But it's okay, Joey. It's just how it is.
It isn't, though.
He clenched the fabric of his jumpsuit, cursing the person who made an 11-year-old think the world worked this way, then cursed himself for his role in it. You're wrong. It is. Sis yells at me because I feel a little. You run after me because I feel a lot. It's okay, it's what I do, and it's what grown-ups do. A single dimple formed on Tessa's cheek. Except Marina. I like her. She's nice and talks to me about fun things. She says it's because I'm special. I think she's right. Marina is very special. Joe decided he'd swept Maria over the head later for that one. And I think I scared her away. Too freaky. 'Cause I'm me. That one was the hardest for Tess to say. She wished she hadn't because the second she said it felt true. Her bottom lip quivered. I just wish I wasn't me and that not me was like everyone else. And I wish I was okay. The heartbreak that had been collapsing in on Joe felt down then and there. No one looked at Tess like a person, let alone a child. Not even Tess, not even him. She was just an enigma, an icy set piece that existed to make everyone else feel whole, but not herself. He had enabled that. The narrative that small people only felt simple things. It had all come full circle. Joe clutched the plastic dog tag strung around his neck. Either through inspiration or determination, a small fire sparked inside of him. She tried to explain herself to him as well as she could, so it was only fair to do the same. Alrighty, let's give this a shot.
You know, I used to not be okay.
Tessa's eyes grew wide in disbelief, and small in suspicion. This is a ploy.
No, honest. I was pretty messed up as a kid.
That doesn't sound right. You're too normal.
Pretty confident for someone who wasn't even alive to see it.
Before I was born?
So that would have been like when Joe was Tessa's age, right?
Yeah. The allure of the before times was too great to ignore. It seemed mystical to her. The air of ancients.
It was a lot different back then. Everything was different, I guess.
Did she dare to ask? Different how? She dared.
Well, I had a brother for one.
Jesus Christ. This is gonna be even more depressing!
Exclamation points went off in Tessa's head. She had at least a dozen questions to ask. But before she could bring up any of them, the truth made itself known to her. The exclamation points became ellipses. Oh. Sorry.
It was a long time ago.
She stayed silent.
You weren't going to ask?
Wouldn't it be rude? Joe shrugged.
His name was Benjamin, but I just called him Benji. Yeesh, my mom would always throw a fit when she heard me call him that. Benjamin is a perfectly lovely name, and all that jazz.
It's biblical.
Most things are, kid.
Tess recalled the handful of times she'd been dragged to Sunday school. Her blood ran cold with Old Testament fear. Her voice went quiet. Was it a plague?
No, nothing like that. He drowned.
Tess had shifted around to find a comfortable position, but remained thoroughly uncomfortable. It wasn't scary, just sad. And Joey sounded sad when he said it.
I was younger than you were when it all went down, And he was even younger than that, so he...
Losing track, Joe scratched his head. Half of it felt like he had traveled back in time to that sweltering day where stepping outside felt like stepping out of the shower. The other half of him felt like it didn't exist.
He, couldn't swim. I told him I would teach him how. There was an auto show at the pharmacy, and Pops' shop was sponsoring. You've met my Pops, right?
Very big. Very scary.
Nah, he doesn't talk much. Kinda like you. I wish he did, though.
Why are you trying to delay this, he thought. Saying it changes nothing.
Anyway, I said that he should go to the river and that I'd catch up. They found him a few days later.
But saying it out loud changed everything. Tess thought about how many times she had swam in that river and how she might never want to again. She thought about how Joey looked like a new Joey. Tess reached over to touch his leg, not knowing anything else to do except placing her hand on it. Are you okay now?
Oh, usually. It comes and goes. Comes when I worry about folks. Goes when I know they're okay. But back then... well, I guess no one would be okay after that. And I wasn't.
Did you feel a lot? He stared at her and grinned, but Tess knew it was just for pretend.
Too much. Too sad, too guilty, too angry. Mom was hysterical through all of it, and I can't really blame her. Pops never talked about it and threw out most of Benji's things within a week. Can't really blame him either.
A lot and a little.
Yep, and I must be their kid because I got both of those things.
Joe toyed with the dog tag, twirling his fingers through the chain. It weighed more than the plastic it was supporting.
Some days I skipped school and would just sunbathe on the riverbank. Looking back, that was probably weird, but being so close to where it happened made it feel like it hadn't. But then I would go out. Everything was just a reminder. People would look at me and I'd get heated. They'd whisper and I'd lash out. I thought maybe they were talking about how it was my fault, or maybe they just felt bad. Didn't matter. Both scenarios really ticked me off.
You sound paranoid. Like Sis.
Probably was. It was pretty lonely. Picking fights with people didn't make you a lot of friends. Being Maria was the exception.
Tess considered this, imagining Joey sitting as he is now, except in the middle of a wheat field, the plain soared far above him in the distance. I hope you're not lonely anymore.
Oh, of course not. I got you, don't I?
And Sis.
Especially your sister. And remind me to wash my mouth out with a soap later for saying that. She was as mouthy back then as she is now, and I didn't exactly practice the art of pacifism, so us getting to know each other may or may not have involved a fist fight on the playground.
Sounds about right.
Couldn't have happened any other way. But as crazy as it sounds, she was the only one who would let my emotions play out.
Did not compute. Tess wrinkled her nose, unable to imagine any show as weak of a display as empathy. That's impossible. She would never do that. Also, she would probably call you a crybaby.
Don't get me wrong, she absolutely did. But she would always stick around. Didn't matter how many times I told her to go away. It was always, shape up, slacker. That lemonade stand ain't gonna build itself. I want the lemonade stand arc.
Oh, that sounds more like her. Does that count?
Not sure. I like to think she was trying to help in her own way. It might be the only way, and I'm better off for it.
The conversation petered and to fumes. They both stared ahead, watching the spattering of people occasionally walking by. A lot had been said. Even more been thought. Much of what Joey told her was sad, but for some reason she felt warm. The conversation had felt like a hug. She had been right. He had been the new Joey. Perhaps this one was better. He looked Tess straight in the eye as much as he could under the water fountain. Joey had no illusions that he understood everything, or that any of the things he said would make her feel better. But doing this was at least something.
Things are different for each of us, Tess. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. It's not always going to be okay. You won't always be okay. And there are going to be times you might not even know why.
A hollow space drilled itself into Tess's chest. It dug her way down her gut.
But I'll be here, even if you never feel okay again.
However, the thing about hollow spaces is that there's always room for them to be filled.
That said, not feeling okay sucks though, so let's try to boost your chances.
He pulled the dog tag over his head. At first, Tess wasn't sure what to do. She watched the tag sway from the chain as he held it out. Cautiously, she opened up her palm and reached out. He dropped it in her hand, the beads of the chain rattling behind it. Tessa squinted and read the faded name carved into it.
Oh.
But this is...
a good luck charm. It might not seem like a real dog tag, but the engraver who gave it to my brother said it works twice as well.
A lump formed in Tess's chest. That's not the only place where it's forming.
Yeah.
It snaked its way up her throat and she could feel it clenching.
I'm not a very lucky guy though, so try to give it back once you don't need it anymore, okay?
She couldn't see it now. Everything looked like a blur of watercolor. She clutched the charm in her fist and brought it to her chest. Joey. I think I feel like crying now. She choked out the first two sobs before Joe pulled her in. Tess clenched his jumpsuit and cried into it. No one seemed to pay them any mind.
Wow. Okay.
Save here, because I